Thank you for clicking this video. This is Bato Pithola and my name is Mujela Olua, and today we want to talk about how to examine a nominal complainant. In a criminal matter, a nominal complainant is the victim of the crime. So that's the person that reported to the police or that was at the receiving end of the act of crime, the commission of the crime. So that person is called a nominal complainant. Usually they're the one, usually that person files the complaint at the police station, depending on the circumstances of the case, or they could just be that the person that the police intercepts if the accused person or defendant is caught, in the act. But for the purpose of criminal litigation, the nominal complainant is the victim of the crime. Today, we want to talk about how to examine them. Then in another video, we're going to be talking about how to cross-examine them. That is how the defendant will cross-examine them. It's important for us to talk about this because in a number of cases, in most cases, if not all, the nominal complainant is very crucial, to the case. There are cases that would go on, if the nominal complainant refuses to testify or cannot be brought to court to testify, because in some circumstances it's just very impossible. And I've been in cases like that where the nominal complainant will say that they're no longer interested. It's taken a while before the case got to court. They moved on with their lives. They are no longer within jurisdiction, and so many other excuses and so many other things. So sometimes if it's impossible to get them to court, the case can go on without them. But in most cases, their evidence is very crucial, for the prosecution to establish their case. So we're going to be talking about how the prosecution establishes or seeks to establish a case, a criminal matter in court through the nominal complainant. Don't forget that if you've not subscribed to Bato Pithola, this is a very good time for you to click the subscription button and to turn on notifications so that you get notified whenever a new video drops. Also, you can join the channel for a token. If you need personalized consultation, you can book through the link in the description box, and you could get a paid session where we talk one-on-one about your legal challenge, and I prefer legal solutions as a lawyer to it. And also, please buy my books. I've got 2 books on seller, and I'm working on a couple of others. Please buy my books. Thank you so much. So how does the prosecution examine the nominal complainant? You put them in the box, of course. They are put on oath, and then you ask the questions, the WH questions. Like I always say when we talk about examination, there are several videos we've done on examination on this channel. Please watch them all. Try to look for them. Examination in chief, cross-examination, several videos. So you ask them who they are, their name, where they live, what they do for a living, and you could then begin to ask questions that relate to the matter. So we're going to use the crime of stealing today. Because I wanted to use the crime of rape, but I don't want to use something that might be triggering for some people, and I don't want to use something that YouTube might flag, as containing violence or something of the sort. But if you watch this video, you should have a fair idea of how to examine your nominal complainant, in any crime, whatsoever the crime may be. So stealing, we're using the crime of stealing as a case study. So the first question you'd like to ask are the WH questions, of course. Who are you? What do you do for a living? Where do you live? So after that, you can ask your witness as a prosecutor, do you know the defendant in the dock? So they would look at the dock and then they would say, yes, I know the defendant. That would be the answer naturally. Or they might try to say, no, I do not know them, or I only knew them when so and so happened. But because you must have prepped them very well, or they might be extra smart, would assume that they would say, yes, I know them, which is the correct answer that the court needs. So then you follow up with the question, how do you know the defendant? And then they would say that I met the defendant for the first time on the 18th of June 2020. I was in my house alone at around 8:30 p.m. at night. There was light, or there was no light. Now let's use there was no light so that our cross-examination for this video, so that it can be very interesting. So there was no light in my house. I was cooking in the kitchen with the aid of a torchlight or a lamp that was already dim, and then I heard footsteps in my living room. Because I was cooking, I did not hear immediately they came in, but as soon as I heard footsteps, I went into the living room and I saw a figure moving. I flashed the light and the figure hid behind my set of chairs. Then I flashed the light again, and then the figure jumped out from behind the chairs and they made for the door. I ran after them. I caught hold of their clothes and I tried to and I realized that they are taking maybe an envelope containing worth of dollars that I had brought in, that I had in my house, and then I tried to take it from them, but they broke free and they ran out of my house. So that's the story. That's how the nominal complainant knows the defendant. So then the next question would be that you said there was no light. So how do you know that it was the defendant that came into your house to steal that day? Then they would answer and say something like, okay, when I came into the living room and flashed the light, I saw them briefly. So this was the face of the person that I saw. Then you could ask a follow-up question and say that after they left, when did you discover that your money was missing? Then they'll say something like, okay, I shut my door afterwards, and then I tried to look around to survey my properties to see if anything was missing or not. And that was when I realized that they had gone for my dollar notes that were in the envelope. Then you could follow up and say, are you saying that you did not actually see them take an envelope containing money from your house? And they will say, actually, I saw them take something that looked like an envelope, but I did not realize what it was until I checked my house and found that the money was missing. Or they would say something, or they might say something like, oh, I actually saw that particular envelope in their hands. That was why I tried to detain them and retrieve it, but they broke free and ran away. So if they had said the latter, that would bring up the question of speculation, that you're not even sure if they're the ones that took it, and that you're not even sure if they're the one that took it. And then the defense would probably say something during cross-examination like, what if someone had come into your house and taken it before that time, or you had misplaced it, or that was not your envelope and whatnot. So let's just go with I tried to take it back from them, but they broke free and they ran out of the house. So you could ask a question, how did the defendant know that you had money in the house and where to go? Or you could ask a question of, how long was the defendant in the house for? So the complainant would say something like, I'm not certain, but between the time that I realized that someone else was in the house with me and the time that they broke free and ran out of the house, it couldn't have been more than 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Then what did you do afterwards? Then afterwards, I surveyed my property. I realized that the money was missing. And then I called my sister, who told me to report to the police the next morning. So a follow-up question would be, are you certain that no one else was with you in the house? Do you live alone ordinarily? Yes, I live alone. No one was with me in the house. Then what if it was one of your neighbors that came in and took the money? So prosecution tried to shake your nominal complainant very well, such that when the defense is shaking them, the shaking would not be too much. So preempt the defense, ask questions that they might ask. So if, for instance, they had said that they realized that they are taking the money, afterwards you could ask a question that, how are you so sure that it was the defendant that took your money? Then you'd say, I'm certain because I brought that money in with me at about, then they would say something like, I'm certain because I brought that money in back from work at about 6:30 p.m. that evening. I kept it on the chair and put my bag on it. Then I went straight into the kitchen to start cooking. Because I was cooking an elaborate meal, I did not finish until around 8:30 when they came in and took it. There was no one else with me in the house during that period. Then you could ask a question of, why was your door open, or how did they get in? without your knowledge, then they would say something like, okay, I would normally just close my door and not shut it or bolt it when I'm in the house and I'm still awake and moving around until I'm going to sleep before I bolt it. Why would you do something like this? Next question. Because my neighbors could come and knock for something, or because our house, our area was generally safe. So on this particular, so that means that if someone had come in, you would not have known. You're asking these questions because these are things that the defense would ask. So it's, the claimant, so the complainant would say, no, if anyone came in and I was in the kitchen, I would have known. But you just said you did not know until you heard footsteps. Yes, that was because I was playing loud music, or that was because I was absent-minded, or that was because I was making swallow and stirring the pot and the noise did not allow me to hear. Or they could defend and say that I've lived in this house for 5 years and no one has ever come in without my knowledge, even with my door unbolted like that. So you are saying that you're sure that no one else came in between the time that the defendant came, between the time that you came back from work and the time that the defendant assailed you, or the defendant came into your house. Yes, that is what I'm saying. Then when did you report to the police? I reported to the police the next morning as early as possible. You could also ask and say that, did you call for help? Yes, I shouted help, help, but I was the only one around in my apartment that day. My neighbor had gone to church and my other neighbor was not around for a week preceding, and my other neighbor had not been around for about a week preceding that time. Then you'd say, so what happened at the police station? I made a statement at the police station and the officer promised to keep in touch with me if anything came up as they conducted investigations. How old are you? I am 25 years old. That's just a question that you can ask just to tell the court that this person is old enough to know what they're saying and they're speaking the truth, most likely. And then if there was an identification parade, because of the circumstances of the case, it's important to point it out. Was there an identification parade, to determine if this person was actually the person that stole from you? Yes, there was an identification parade. So if you talk about it. If there's no identification parade, you don't talk about it. But the defense will certainly talk about it. So let's assume there was an ID parade and you'd say that, so how did you identify the defendant? He had a mark on the top of his left brow, and I saw that mark as I briefly as I flashed the light, and he had a peculiar smell, and that was the same smell and the mark that I used to identify him at the police station during the identification parade. Something certain, because the defense will try to puncture it. So you could ask different questions and say different things, but it's important, if you are the prosecution, to preempt the defense and establish a good case. Give your nominal complainant the opportunity to say all the things that they would have said in response to the defense, to say it in your own case, so that if the defense wants to puncture it, you give them extra work to do and not just a free ride. So after you might have exhausted your questions, you say, what do you want from this court today? I want the court to give me justice. I want my money to be retrieved, and I want the defendants to be punished for what they did to me. No further questions, my lord. And then the court will turn you over to the defense. In the next video, we're going to be talking about how to cross-examine the nominal complainant. Now, there's usually a controversy about who should tender the statement of the nominal complainant. The prosecution does not have to tender the statement of the nominal complainant, their witness. No. If you need it as defense, you can tender it just to puncture the veracity of the evidence that has been given orally. But that will be up to you. You can't make the prosecution tender it, and properly, the prosecution should not tender the statement of the nominal complainant. That's all I have for you in this video. I will see you in my very next video. Don't forget to subscribe. To do's.